Hello everyone, today I'm going to show you how to make these laced beaded Kumihimo bracelets, and this is what they look like. So I have two different versions here. It's the same basic braid, then I've just added the embellishment slightly differently. So on this one, all I've done is use seed beads. You can see the effect that gives. Gives a really nice kind of laced effect along the edges of the braid. And then when you do it up, it's going to sit like this on your wrist. So you have your braid running down the middle there, and then the embellishment on the side. And then the other one, I've used bicones to add a bit more, you could say, bling, rather than just the seed beads. So it's kind of two completely different looks that you can get out of it, but using the exact same technique, and it'll sit like that. So you have the two different versions here. And these bracelets, with the pattern that I've done here, turn out to be about a 7-inch bracelet. And then obviously I've added a clasp with extended chains so they can be adjustable to bigger than that. So just so you're aware of the pattern, you can always make it longer if you need to by extending the pattern, or shorter if you need to as well, by taking off some beads on the pattern that I'm going to show you. So if you want to learn how to make these bracelets, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to need. Now first of all here we need a round Kumihimo disc because we are making a round braid. And then as for the cord for the braid, what I'm using here is a 0.4mm S-lon, and I've just got this nice blue colour because it will go nicely with the beads that I'm using for the main part of the braid. And as for the beads, what I have here first of all is 8O Miyuki seed beads, the ones that I'm using. This specific colour is Matte Opaque Cobalt AB, and these are going to be for the main part of the braid itself, along with the SuperDuos, and these are just some Bordeaux ones, the colour. Just thought they would go nicely together. But the SuperDuos and the 8Os are for the main braid itself. Then here we have 11Os. Again, Miyuki seed beads. These specific ones are silver lined Duracoat Violet. Again, just the colour because I thought they would go nicely. And these ones are going to be used afterwards, after we make the braids, to add the embellishment with, alongside the bicones as well. And again, here I just have some 4mm bicones in a nice blue colour to again go well with the other colours that I'm using as well. And then to add in this embellishment after we made the braid, I'm going to be using a beading needle first of all, and then also some S-lon size D here. So it's basically just like a sewing thread. You can use fireline or whatever else that you have, as long as you can make sure it will obviously go through your beads as well. And I've just matched my colour of my thread to go as well as I can with all the materials that I'm using as well. So if you can see a little bit, it won't be too obvious. And then also to completely finish off the braid at the end, I'm going to be using my Kumihimo ends here. They're going to fit perfectly. To then finish it off nice and professionally using a clasp, extended chain and some jump rings. Obviously you can use whatever kind of clasp that you want to. So let's get it all together and let's get started. The lengths of cord that we're then going to need is 4 lengths here of 1 meter each. And what I'm going to do with these is put all the ends together, fold them over in half to find roughly where the middle is. I'm going to just tie a regular overhand knot. And then to this I've just attached a piece of scrap wire here. You can use whatever you have. You can also use Kumihimo if you prefer that. But then I found the middle here. I have my knot in place, and then that means the 4 lengths of cord that we have turns into 8 working lengths for the Kumihimo disc. So I've then taken all my lengths of cord here and attached them onto my disc, and I've taken the knot with a scrap piece of wire down through the centre of the disc, and then I've added 1 length of cord on each side of every dot all the way around. So I'm not worrying about the numbers here, I'm just using the dots there for reference. And then the first thing I want to start doing is make a little section of braid here to begin with before we start adding in any beads, about 1 to 2 centimeters. So all I'm going to do is take my top left one, release that, bring it down over the middle, and then down, stay on the left side of the bottom pair here. And then I'm going to take my bottom right one over the middle and up and stay on the right side of the top. So that's the first pair. Now I'm going to turn my disc a quarter for the next pair that we're due to use. Then I'm going to again take my top left one over the middle and down, stay on the left side. Then the bottom right over the middle and stay on the right side. And then again turn your disc to the next pair. And then just keep going like this until you have about 1 to 2 centimeters of braid. So now that you then made your little selection of braid to begin with here, it's now time to start adding in the beads. So I've now added all my beads onto all my lengths of cord here, and this is then how you want to do this setup. Now I'm going to go through it here, but I've also got a picture of this setup. Now this design is based off one I've done previously, so the basic braid itself it's the same braid that I've done in another tutorial, and I'm just using the braid for a different design afterwards. But that one is this bracelet that I've done previously. So a beaded Kumihimo bracelet with SuperDuos. So what I'm going to do, instead of just take a picture of this setup, because I've already done it before, and there's a picture of that on my website. So look for the pictures tutorial for this bracelet here. So the beaded Kumihimo bracelet with SuperDuos. And it's on my website, and it's the exact same setup anyway, because the basic braid is the same. The only difference in this design that I'm doing now is the embellishment that we're going to be doing afterwards. And then there's also going to be a link to my website down in the description box below here. So if you need to go and have a look at that picture to help get the setup right, then you can do that with that link. But then as for the setup here, I'm going to start with my top left one and go through them one by one. So the top left one here, we have 38 8/0s, so it's just full of 8/0s. The next one also has 38 8/0s, so that's the right one on the top. Then we'll go out to the side here, so on the right side, the top one of the two, again you can see it's just 38 8/0s. Then the next one down here is the one that's a little bit different. In this case I have a total of 37 beads. Now on this one I start out with an 8/0 and then it alternates between 1 8/0, 1 SuperDuo, 1 8/0, 1 SuperDuo, and so on all the way throughout until the very last one is an 8/0. So in total there's 37 beads here alternating between each other. And then to continue down to the bottom of the disc here, the right one on the bottom also has 38 8/0s. The left one of the two also has 38 8/0s, just full of 8/0s both of them. The left side of the disc here, the bottom one of the two, has 38 8/0s again. And then again the top one on the left side, we run into this one that's a bit different again, and that's exactly the same as the one we have on the other side. So we have 37 beads in total. We start out with an 8/0, alternate between the 8/0 SuperDuo, 8/0 SuperDuo, all the way till the end, where we then finish off on the 8/0 as well. So that is then the bead setup for this braid. Now this counts if you work the same way as I do. So on a Kumihimo braid here, doing a Kumihimo braid, you can work in different ways. Some people start with the top left one, some people start with the top right one, or some people start from the bottom. Now what I will say is if you start from the top left one, that's how I start, it just comes natural that way. So if you start from the top left one or the bottom right one, those two are the same thing. So if you start with either of them, you want to set up the beads the same way that I've done here. But if you start with the top right one or the bottom left one, because those two are the same as each other as well, then you want to set up your beads just a little bit differently, because to then achieve the same effect to get your SuperDuos running along the side of the braid, what you'll need to do is add on your beads in a mirror image basically. So imagine that you have a mirror in front of your disc, and then you need to add the beads in that mirror image. So that means everything kind of swaps places. The top two will swap over with each other. Obviously it doesn't matter in this case because they have the same beads on anyway, but the principle of it, they would swap over, the setup of the beads that is. The bottom two also will swap over. Again, it doesn't really matter here. But then on the side, the top right one and the top left one would swap over, just the setup of the beads. And then the bottom right one and the bottom left one also swaps over. So the positioning of the beads on the cords, not the cords themselves obviously, would just swap over the middle there. And that's how you're then going to achieve the same braid if you work from the top right or the bottom left. So now that we then have all the beads in place here on the cords, we then need to start adding them into the braid. So you then want to continue doing the braid just in the same way that you did before. So in my case I'm going to take my top left one here, but then the difference is now as I'm releasing the cord from the disc, I need to just drop down the very first bead that I run into. So bring that up, release the cord and let the bead drop all the way down into the middle. And what you need to make sure of when you're doing beaded Kumihimo, if you want the bead to be on the outside of the braid, is that whenever you drop down a bead here, you need to make sure the bead goes underneath the cords that are crossing over in the middle there. So if it doesn't go under by itself, just tuck it in with your finger, then bring the cord down. Just continuing the braid, take the bottom right one, and then as you're releasing the cord, just drop down one bead, let it drop all the way into the middle, just tuck it in with your finger, and then place the cord back on the top. Turn your disc to the next pair, about quarter, and then as you're releasing the cord, drop down one bead, and again make sure it gets tucked in the middle there. And the same with the bottom right one. So you just want to keep doing this adding in one bead at a time, building it up, and just make sure you get those beads in the middle tucked underneath there, because then they end up on the outside. If you end up having a bead on top and then you keep going, it'll actually end up on the inside of the braid, which is also a design you can do, but that's not what we're looking for this one. We want the beads to end up on the outside. So just keep going like this until you used up all your beads. Now that I've then used up all my beads here and all my lengths of cord, then what we need to do is just finish off the braid with just a section of braid with just the cord of about 1 or 2 centimeters, just like we did at the beginning. So all I'm going to do is just continue braiding without adding in any more beads. So just keep going with the same braid that we've done the whole time, and then you'll find your cords here in the middle will naturally singe in. So you just get a nice ending there that we can then use to finish off the braid itself afterwards. So just do this until you have about 1 or 2 centimeters of braid. Now that I then completely finished my braid here, what I then just want to do is secure the end in place so we can take it securely off the disc without the braid itself coming undone. The way that I'm going to do that is, this is the pair that I've just used. I'm not going to use those. I'm going to use the pair first of all that was due to take next if I was to continue the braid. Then I take cords that are diagonally opposite each other, so these two here, bring them across the middle and tie a regular knot, and then tighten that down right at the end of the braid, pull it nice and tight. And then I take the other two from the same pair that's diagonally opposite each other, bring them across the middle and tie a regular knot and tighten that, and then go to the other pair and do the exact same thing. So again, take cords that are diagonally opposite each other and then make your knot across the middle and then tighten it there right at the end of the braid. And like I said, this is just a way to secure the end so we can securely take it off the disc without worrying about it coming undone, and then continue working with it as well. So the last ones, tie a knot and then tighten it. So there we go. So now I can take it off the disc here, as you can see, and the braid itself doesn't unravel right at the end. You obviously don't want to be messing too much with it because they are just individual knots here. But then what I'm going to do now is I actually want to completely secure the end here. So this is kind of just temporary. So on this end you obviously can get rid of your wire if you've attached that, if you use that. But then this is your braid, and what you might find is you have a little bit of a twist in it. What I then like to just do with that is twist it the opposite direction for a bit. You can hold it a bit and it just kind of settles the braid to make it a little bit more straight. So just do that a few times. Then on this end what I'm going to do is add some glue all around the ends here where the cords are coming out from. Let the glue dry and then cut off the excess cord, because then what we have is both ends ready to then also be able to finish them off using the Kumihimo ends. So this is the place we're at. The next step then after doing that is to add the embellishment. So now I then have my braid ready here. What we need to do is start making the embellishment as well. So here I've then taken my thread, so just about a wingspan and a bit. It really depends what you're comfortable working with. We don't need loads, but we do need to go back and forth a few times here. And then I've just put a knot on one end here, just obviously be a stopper so it doesn't pull all the way through. And then I just added my beading needle as well. So now what we need to do is first of all attach this to the braid. So what I'm going to do is start on one end, and I just want to go in this section where we have just the cord before the beaded section of the braid. I'm just going to go through it, and then like I said, we need to attach the thread first of all before we then start actually adding in the embellishment, just to make it nice and secure. Pull that through, and then I want to go back and forth through the braid here in the same area a few times. Just going to add extra security and strength to it. So then the next step here, once we've attached it and feel it's nice and secure, is to work our way up towards where the beads are. So I'm just going to go into the braid and then through the middle of the braid here up towards the first few beads. And I'm going to stick on towards one side where the SuperDuos are first of all. And I want to reach the very first bead that we kind of run into. So I want to come out of the corded section of the braid right in front of that bead, and if you can you might as well go through it straight away there. So the very first one, pull it all the way through, because what we then need to do is get to the bead that we then need to connect to the very first SuperDuo. So right now I'm right at the end of the beaded section. I want to then go through the next one, because if you look at your braid, you'll find that from the first SuperDuo, we want to get to the Ado that's pretty much straight across from it, but that has a bit of a gap in between it. You'll be able to see that closer in your braid. So I'm going to go through that next bead, straight into that, just through that one, because also then that kind of hides the thread, makes it so you can't really see it, because we're using the braid and the beads here as kind of a path. So there we go. I'm now through that bead, coming out of it, where I'm then going to connect straight from that to that very first SuperDuo. And I obviously want to add some beads here, because otherwise we'll be able to see the thread. So this is where the 11 nodes then come in. So I've just got some of those ready. And on this little section, I want to add 3 of the 11 seed beads. So there, get that through the next, or the very first SuperDuo here, and you want to go through the outer hole, so the hole in the SuperDuo that we haven't used yet, and pull your thread all the way through, and then you'll be able to see that that's just bridging that little gap from the seed bead in the braid that we're coming out from up to that very first SuperDuo, and it just gives it a nice little more finished look, rather than say having open thread or coming through somewhere else. So that's how we're going to start out. So now we need to go into the proper pattern for the embellishment. So then what we need for this embellishment is to get in some more of the 11-ohs, because we're still using those, but then also we want to bring in our bicones here as well, if you want to use them, that is, otherwise just the 11-ohs. So what I'm going to do is to make this fit, because what we need to do now is reach from the first SuperDuo that we've just gone through over to the third one. So not the very next one, but skipping one and going to the third one. And what we need to do is first of all pick up 5 11-ohs, and then I want to pick up 1 bicone, so that sits in the middle, because we then need to pick up another 5 11-ohs. So there we go, it looks like that. And then I'm going to take this braid, and then, like I said, coming from the very first SuperDuo, skipping one, and then going through the third one in that open hole still that hasn't been used, and then pull it all the way through. And then when you pull it tight, that little embellishment is going to sit just like this, so kind of sticking out, going around that second SuperDuo there. So that's basically what we want to keep doing. So we're now coming out of that third one. We now want to do the next one. So again, we're going to pick up 5 of the 11-ohs, then 1 of my bicones, and then another 5 of the 11-ohs. And then again, coming out of that SuperDuo that we're coming out of there, skip one and go through the one after that. And then pull it all the way through. Just avoid a knot here. And then as I'm pulling this tight, you'll be able to see this is going to sit pretty much just like the first one. And it's going to be the very beginning of the embellishment here. So you want to keep doing this all the way up. What I just want to mention as well is this is what I'm doing here if you want to add in the bicones. If you don't want to use the bicones, what I've done, so I've done one here without bicones on it, so it looks like that. So it also gives just a really nice look without the bicones. It's just whatever embellishment you prefer. On this one here, on each section we're adding from one SuperDuo to the next one over after skipping one. Here, instead of adding in the bicone, I've just taken 12 of my 11-ohs in one straight row and then gone through the next SuperDuo and then 12 again. So that's all I've done all the way here. So every time I add a new section on this one, if you don't want to use the bicones, just use the 12 11-ohs there instead, and then you'll get that look. So like I said, just keep going like this, all the way up this side of the braid, skipping one SuperDuo, going through the next, until you reach up to the other end and you run out of SuperDuos. And now continue all the way to the other end here till I don't have any more SuperDuos to use. Now in this case I do have one SuperDuo left, but as you can see that's the one that I have to skip to go into the next one, and there's not one there. So for here, if you've done the same pattern as me, if you made it longer or another length where it fits, then obviously just continue with that. But otherwise what I need to do now is go from this SuperDuo and we need to get over to the other side so we can do that side as well. So I'm just going to leave that last one for now. We'll take that into the pattern here as we then go back through the next time. So I'm going to go from this SuperDuo and then I'm going to go right next to it and straight through the braid. So I'm going straight through the braid to the other side, and then I'm coming up right next to that SuperDuo in the same place, just like that. Bring it all the way through. And then also you want to make sure now that this is pulled the right tightness, so you don't want to have ideally any loose thread, because we're not going to be going back through it. So it sits like that. And then now on this side we basically want to do the exact same thing. So I'm coming out right in front of this SuperDuo. What I want to do is just go through that outer hole that we haven't used yet to get into position first of all, to be able to add in the embellishment on that side as well. And then same as before, we need to then bring in the beads we're going to use. And just like on this side, you want to use the exact same amounts. So I'm going to take 5 of the 11-O's, 1 bicone, and then another 5 of the 11-O's again. And then same principle, don't worry about that last SuperDuo like I said. Just jump from this one while we're going in the opposite direction, skip over the next one, and go through the next one again after that. So we're just constantly skipping one SuperDuo, and then that's going to sit just like that. And you want to just keep doing this. Same thing on this side as I did on the other side. Adding one section of embellishment at a time here. With your 5 11-O's, 1 bicone, and then another 5 11-O's. So that bicone always ends up in the middle of them. Skip one SuperDuo and go through the next one. So there we go. So keep going on this side as well with that, all the way up to the other end, and then here you're going to then end on the same place as we started out, of course. And then that's the first kind of part done. Then once we get to that end, I'm going to show you the next step. So once you get all the way back to the beginning again here on this side, then we just need to bridge that little gap again, just like we started out on the other side. So for that, just like before, I'm just going to get 3 of the 11-O's to fit in perfectly that little gap. Go through the 8-O that's in the braid, that's straight across from the SuperDuo. So you just have a little bit of space there. Pull your thread all the way through, so you can see that this fills in that little gap just nicely. And then make sure you're going to pull the thread nice and tight, so it's going to sit evenly on both sides and look like this. So this is the first step, like I said. Then what I'm just going to do is go through the next bead in the braid. So that's the outer one, the one that we started going through on the other side. Because now what we need to do is reposition the thread and needle to start out the next section. So for that, what I'm going to do is just go through the braid right after that bead, and I want to then come again through the middle of the braid, working my way up. So just push your needle through there, and then where I want to come out is just before the SuperDuo, the second one. So basically number 2, and that's the first one from this side that we then haven't used yet. So just come out just before that, just maneuver your needle to it, pull all the way through, like that. And again, just double check, make sure everything's pulled tight so we don't have any thread showing, because you can only really fix that now if you need to. And then on here, what we need to do is go straight up to the outer hole in that SuperDuo. So basically just like we did on this end where we finished off, now this is where we're going to start off with this one. So go through that. Avoid any knots here in the thread. And then we need to start off this next section. And we're just going to be using the exact same beads. So again, the 11-ohs and then also the bicones if you're using them, or just the 11-ohs if you're not. And it's the same counts as well. So I'm going to take 5 of my 11-ohs. So I've got 5 and then 1 bicone. And then again 5 of the 11-ohs, so the bicone ends up in the middle, just like before. And then now what we need to do, this is then where kind of the trick is to make it look like that kind of laced effect, whether you're using the bicones or not. I'm coming out of this SuperDuo here, and I'm coming out on the top side, so the way that it's facing upwards. So what I want to do is go around the embellishment here that we've already added, around the outside of that, and then through the skip one SuperDuo, the one that was used previously, reach the next SuperDuo that we haven't used yet, come from the top, go around the outside, and then below the embellishment to go through that SuperDuo. So I'm just going to pull this through and pull it tight, might make it a little bit more obvious to see where the beads are going then. So there we go. So as you can see, it's coming from above, going around the outside, and then going below to go through the next SuperDuo. And that's how we kind of achieve that laced effect on the edge. So that's one. Go to the next one. Grab 5 of the 11-ohs. 1 bicone if you're using that. Otherwise, like before, it was just 12 of the 11-ohs if you're not using the bicones. There we go. I'm coming out of the top from that SuperDuo there. We need to skip one SuperDuo, go through the one after that. So I'm coming from the top, going around the outside, and then underneath to come through that next SuperDuo that we need to go through. Just like that. And you can see that's the next one. So we're really starting to get that effect now of them all kind of interlacing with each other. So this is the look and how it's going to end up looking, obviously with the bicones. And if you wanted to do it without, then it's just a really nice and simple effect like that. Either way it looks nice, it's completely up to you what you prefer. But keep going like this up this side as well until you then reach the end, and then here you'll be naturally going into that last SuperDuo that we didn't use before. So that's how we then incorporate that as well. So then again on this end, once we reach that very last SuperDuo, then on this end we need to bridge that gap as well. So just like the other end, we just take 3 of the 11-ohs, come out from that last SuperDuo and go through the 8-oh in the braid, that's straight across from it. Pull it all the way through, just like that, and then again just make sure to pull this a little bit tug so we have a nice and even tension in the whole piece. So there we go. Now we need to move over to the other side, so I'm just going to again go through that other bead in the braid just to get into a better position to then be able to go through the braid. So just straight through it here and then out right in front of the pretty much the same bead but on the other side that we're just coming out of. Because then we need to then just finish off the other side as well, so obviously it looks the same. Go through that first bead first of all, it's in the braid, to make the thread nice and seamless so it doesn't really show up. And then jump to the next one, that is the one right in front of the SuperDuo with that little gap in between. And then we just need to grab 3 of the 11-ohs again. They just fit into that little gap just perfectly. Like that. So you can see that's now the same as the other side. And it makes it look much more finished rather than just say having an empty space there. So there we go. So now we just need to finish off the embellishment on this side as well. So we just need to get the same beads out and ready. So same thing as all the other times. We need to take 5 of the 11 O's, 1 bicone, and then another 5 of the 11 O's. So again, the bicone, just like the other sections, ends up in the middle. So there we go, got 5. And then here, this side is then a little bit different, because here, if you remember, we came from above and then went around the outside and then below to go through. On this side, we actually need to do the opposite. So, coming out from that first SuperDuo, to make it the same as the other side, that's obviously if you want it to look that way, I'm going to come from above. So skip the next SuperDuo, come from above and go through the next SuperDuo, but I'm then actually going to have a needle come out below. So that's the opposite from before. So now my thread is coming out below the way we're looking at it. You could also flip it around and then do it like before. That's up to you, how you feel most comfortable. And then from this SuperDuo, we add another section of our beads. So the 5 11 O's, the bicone, and then another 5 11 O's. Just like that. Coming out from below now, we need to come around the outside, just like before, but then coming below around the outside, skip one SuperDuo, and then coming from above, go through the next SuperDuo, and then taking the needle to come out towards the bottom again, or the back. Pull that tight, because then what you'll be able to see is when you're then looking at this little section, it mirrors the other side. Now if you just want to do it the same way so they don't look the same, that's completely up to you, that's fine as well. I just prefer it to look this way, so it kind of is just a mirror from each other. So you want to keep doing this, add your next section of beads, go from below around the outside, and then go down through the SuperDuo from above. Keep doing this all the way to the other end, and then once you get to down here, what we then want to do is we're going to end up coming in that last SuperDuo there that we haven't used yet. So that's what we're going to end up, just like we did in the first section. So what you'll need to do is come in from that SuperDuo in through the braid, work your way through the middle of the braid all the way to the end section where we have just the cord. So basically the same as I showed you before, just in reverse. And then you'll have your needle and thread coming out from down here, where all you're going to do then is tie off. I would go through the braid a few times just to make it extra secure. Obviously make sure the whole thing is nice and tight. Go through the braid down here once you get to there, and then once you've gone enough, I would tie a few knots in the end and then cut off the excess of the thread. And then once you've done that, you'll have the whole main braid complete really. So all that's left to do will be to finish off the ends with your Kumihimo ends, and then obviously attach your findings. I've already got a tutorial where I show how to do that, to add the Kumihimo ends. So I'm going to put a link to that in the description box below if you need to have a look at that one. But then finish off doing this side, getting rid of your thread on the end, add your Kumihimo ends and your findings, obviously let the glue dry, and then once you've done all that, you'll have your finished bracelet. So now that I've then attached my Kumihimo ends and my findings as well, so my clasp here and then extended chain, then this is what it looks like. So you have your nice Kumihimo braid in the middle, and then with this embellishment along the sides. So obviously you can then use the clasp to fasten the bracelet, and it'll sit like this on your wrist and give a really nice look, especially if you add those bicones as well. But like I said, you don't have to use the bicones, you can just use seed beads without the bicones, and that will also give a really nice look and sit like that on your wrist. So these are two different versions. So you can obviously use whichever one you want to, what you prefer. And you can almost say this is a bit daytime and this is a bit nighttime if you would like to do that. And obviously it also depends what materials that you like to use. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone, in today's tutorial I'm going to show you how to make this Kisses beaded Kumihimo bracelet, and it looks like this. So these are all your X's going all the way around, representing your kisses, making it very Valentine's if you want to use it for that. And then obviously the embellishment as well, and along the sides, and I chose to use red bicones to go with the Valentine's theme. You can also choose whatever materials that you want to use. So this is what it looks like, and it's got